this feedback video, I will look back at what you've learned in week 5 of this course, about designing inclusive neighborhoods and public spaces. I will focus on your thoughts on the discussion points we put forward and on your submissions for the assignment. In this week, you have learned about the effects of changing physical connectivity and of social mobility on the inclusivity of neighborhoods and public spaces. You have been introduced to approaches and strategies to design for different places and people with diverse backgrounds. In week 5, we've raised 2 questions as discussion points. Firstly, we ask you how urban design can exactly help reducing the inequality on the scale level of the neighborhood and its public spaces. Secondly, we ask you about what kind of design elements, materials and symbols you exactly think when designing for shared spaces. On the forum, different answers were given and ideas were raised. To begin with, you continued on the metaphor we used in the introduction video of the public space as a kind of living room. One of you wrote, "Inclusive urban spaces should feel like a living room where one feels comfortable and cozy on his or her own, but is also comfortable with guests." Someone also wrote, "Designing a single type of space is comparable to only having meat-based offers in restaurants, which ultimately leave behind vegetarian and vegan people. Designing inclusive neighborhoods and public spaces is analogous to having a wide menu in a restaurant, where every customer will find her or his right meal. We all can sit down there and have the right to enjoy our moment." Responding to the question on elements, materials and symbols, one of you suggested that small-scale design measures, such as planting, the right lighting, play and sports equipment, can already contribute to the revitalization of a place and thus generate opportunities for residents and visitors to promote exchange. You also come up with water, art, especially music, design, diverse food corners, specific trees, flowers, grass, and colors with resonance in many cultures. In the end, designing the public space can reduce segregation, as one of you wrote. City designers can create public spaces where people with different opinions have the opportunity to share their views. Public places with high visibility and places where they feel free to express themselves. That would reduce segregation. The assignment for week 5 consisted of 2 tasks. In the first task, you were asked to draw a mental map of your own neighborhood. Then a basic drawing on which you could analyze the enclaves, routes and routines, and the sense of place, so the concept from the analysis video. And finally, a comparison drawing. Of course, you all have used very different cities for these assignments, but still we can distill some main findings from your analysis that were all almost without exception of a high quality and precision. Firstly, we concluded that the analysis in aspects of enclaves, routes and routines and sense of place, combined with the mental map based on identification, has led to interesting conclusions in the comparison drawings. Main routes and routines were often aligned with main lines of infrastructure, that in some cases separated enclaves and in other cases were connecting. In this analysis of Feldkirch, Austria, for instance, the mental map shows the most iconic places and buildings in the city. In this small medieval city, the routes and routines and the sense of place mostly coincide with connecting areas, because all important amenities and leisure objectives are located there. This analysis shows a part of Beirut, Lebanon, with different landmarks and areas with high density. On the one hand, most enclaves are generally inclusive, thanks to the good distribution of activities and the design of the infrastructure. On the other hand, the neighborhood is still split up by the highway in 2 parts with different income levels. This analysis of Mexico City, finally, contains a detailed mental map, including a sketch version of the urban fabric within certain areas. Here again, we see the alignment of routes and routines as well as sense of place with connecting areas that are being used by different groups of people. There are only a few streets that are used by local residents only. For the second task, you had to choose 3 different shared public spaces in your own neighborhood. Of these spaces, you were asked to submit pictures, drawings with user zones, and a comparison of the 3 spaces. For this task, we were also able to see some similarities and differences. Overall, the technique of combining using pictures, defining zones, and making drawings has led to various new insights in the way public spaces around the world can bring people together or separate them. 2 main findings seem to come to the surface. On the one hand, that elements and materials can play an important role, and on the other hand, that the question for who to design is most important. For instance, this analysis of 3 public spaces in Puerto Viejo, Ecuador, shows that the lacking of design elements for different uses, such as benches, but also between different uses, such as between cars and pedestrians, can be problematic. But strict boundaries and monofunctional use can also lead to neglecting, for instance, children and elderly people. This analysis of public spaces in La Paz, Bolivia, shows a more convincing use of design elements, including pathways for adults that lead to playgrounds for children. Trees are planted on strategic spots in order to provide shadow, and symbols like a monument or a viewpoint can bring people with different backgrounds together. Finally, in this analysis of Cape Town, South Africa, we see how the second and third example cover a range of activities like sports and leisure, while they also have a fenced boundary to the street. The first example has private seating for restaurant clients, but the sidewalk includes shaded spaces for people to sit and linger about, and the intersection is cobbled paving in order to slow traffic down, thus creating a place where people with various backgrounds can meet. This and the other analysis show what urban design can and can't do in order to tackle urban inequality and segregation. So this was the feedback on week 5 of this course. Thank you for taking such an active part in it. That's really inspiring for us as a team. I hope you will enjoy the rest of the course and say goodbye.